Hello, this is the story, The Northeast Wind in Oz by Wendy Roth, that's me, written in 1988, with illustrations by the amazing Eric Shanauer. Is something wrong, Dorothy? Asked Jellia Jam. Princess Dorothy of Oz was watching the rain fall into the Emerald Palace courtyard very solemnly. Oh, Jellia, I'm so bored, said Dorothy. Everyone in the Emerald City seems to know how to keep busy on a rainy day except me. Can you think of anything in the palace I can do? I was just going to clean out the palace attic, said Jellia. No one's been up there for years. Maybe you would like to go explore it. I never knew there was a palace attic, said Dorothy, finally showing some interest. Jellia led Dorothy through halls and upstairs and down corridors. They even went past the wizard's room, which is in one of the palace's highest towers. Dorothy followed Jellia until she came to a small, olive green door at the very top of the palace. The room was full of old furniture, crates, boxes, and old books. After digging through a few boxes, Dorothy noticed a small emerald-covered trunk in one corner. On top of the trunk was a small package wrapped in sea green tissue paper. She carefully unwrapped it and found inside a music box with a statue of a fairy standing on a pedestal. The statue was so lifelike that for a moment Dorothy thought it was a real fairy. She turned the key at the bottom of this pedestal and the fairy began to spin while the music played. When the music ran down, the room seemed very quiet. Then suddenly, the music box began to shake. The fairy statue began to move. Then she stepped off the pedestal and walked over to an astonished Dorothy. Thank you for saving me, my friend, said the fairy. Who are you? Asked Dorothy. Once, began the fairy, I was in the land of Ev when I was captured by Evaldo, the evil king of Ev. He told a sorcerer to put a spell on me, which would turn me into a porcelain statue. It caused me to lose my memory of living before becoming a statue. I even forgot my name, so I've been calling myself Everell. The sorcerer was so very afraid of Evaldo that he ran away before telling the king that the spell was only temporary and that I would be released from it after 100 turns of the music box, which Evaldo had placed me on. The king gave the music box to his daughter, Evella, who often wound it up to listen to the music. She had gotten up to 99 turns when Evaldo sold her and the rest of her family to the Gnome King. I thought I would never be saved until Princess Langwidere moved into the palace of Ev. Her maid, Nanda, was cleaning one day when she found my music box and gave it to her niece, Evelyn. Evelyn, without even bothering to wind up the box once, sent it across the desert to Ozma for her birthday. I've been here in the palace ever since then. The little fairy smiled ruefully at this turn of events. But now I am myself again, and I am free from the enchantment. Because you have freed me, I'll grant you a wish. But I don't need a wish, said Dorothy. I have everything I need right here in Oz, and anything else I could possibly want, Ozma can get for me with the magic belt. But I must grant you a wish for saving my life, said Everell. I don't need a wish, but someone else might. May I give my wish away? Asked Dorothy. Yes, but good, said Dorothy. Then let's go find Ozma. Dorothy found Ozma in the middle of a meeting with many Oz celebrities. Deciding that the meeting could wait, she burst into the room and explained her situation. If you'd like, began Ozma, I could have the magic belt pick at random among the people who could use a wish. Dorothy agreed to this, and the whole party went to Ozma's boudoir to get the magic belt. Ozma told the belt to fetch someone who needed a wish. Suddenly, a boy of about 11 appeared before them. He seemed a bit shocked. Where am I? He asked shakily. This is the land of Oz, said the Tin Woodman. Is it really? Asked the boy. I've read the Oz books, and I always knew that if I believed enough in Oz, I'd get there someday. Dorothy introduced everyone and explained about her wish. I'm Nicholas, said the boy. What are you going to wish for, Nick? Asked Scraps. I don't know, he said. Do I have to wish right away? Of course not, said Ozma. Take your time. While you're thinking, why don't we show you around Oz? They decided to form a tour group of Dorothy, the Scarecrow, and Everell to take Nicholas to the palace of Glinda, the good sorceress who lived in the Quadling country. But first, Dorothy showed him around the palace. Dorothy led Nick through many of the beautiful rooms. They stopped to rest after a while and sat down on one of the sofas in the reception parlor. The sofa immediately shook itself violently until the children fell off. Then it straightened itself up again against the wall. Is all the furniture in Oz alive? Asked Nick, somewhat startled. Oh no, said Dorothy, trying to get back on her feet. That sofa was brought to life years ago and attached to a gump head to carry Ozites out of the palace. She explained all about the flying gump and how that sofa had become a part of it. After the gump was taken apart, the sofas were put back here. I keep forgetting that this one's alive. It always throws me off. She showed Nicholas all the other pieces of the gump. They're not used for anything now. You can have them if you want. No one has any use for moving cord. Only in Oz could you find a real live wire, said Nick. The tour group piled into the covered wagon, and the sawhorse pulled them through the rain to Glinda's palace. When they arrived, Glinda greeted them, having already read that they were coming. She showed Nicholas around her palace, stopping finally at the Great Book of Records. Glinda explained to Nicholas how the book kept her informed of all the incidents, big and small, that happened anywhere in the world. If you wait a moment, she told him, an event will appear. They waited until a message appeared. It read, Immortal walks willingly into deadly desert. Won't it tell us who? Asked Nicholas. I'm afraid not, Glinda replied. The Great Book is almost never specific. Nicholas called the others' attention to the Great Book. Surely we should try to find out why he did it, said the Scarecrow. Perhaps he didn't know that anyone who touches the deadly desert will turn into sand. Let's go find him, said Nicholas. This is turning into an adventure. I'll lend you my magic carpet to go into the deadly desert, said Glinda. Good luck in finding him. The group set off for the deadly desert to find their mysterious immortal. On the way toward the desert, Nick noted, Look, it stopped raining. It looks as if we might get a rainbow. The rainbow fell down toward the land, and down it danced a faraway figure. It's Polychrome, exclaimed Dorothy as the fairy landed on the ground and danced over to the wagon, which had stopped. Did you fall off the rainbow again, Polly? Oh no, said Polychrome. This time I came down on purpose. My father sent me to look for my cousin, Ventilation, the northeast wind. Why don't you come with us, suggested the Scarecrow. Maybe we can help you find him. Polychrome climbed into the wagon and told them all about her cousin. He isn't actually the northeast wind yet. His coronation was to be tonight at sunset, but he disappeared last year. We figured he would make it back on his own, but when he never returned, we got worried. All of my sisters and I were sent down to look for him. We're on our way to the deadly desert, said Nick. Maybe we'll find him on the way there. I think that my evil cousin Typhonic made him disappear, said Polychrome. Typhonic will become the northeast wind if Ventilation doesn't come to the coronation. I just hope we can find him before it's too late. By this time, the red wagon had reached the desert due to the sawhorse's incredible speed. Being careful not to touch any of the shifting sands, they unrolled and began to walk upon the green magic carpet. The carpet was continually unrolling as they stepped on it and rolled itself up behind them, never coming to its ends. They traveled toward the west, looking for any form of life. What would happen if someone did touch the sand? Asked Nicholas. Because Oz is a fairyland, began the Scarecrow, no one can be killed while they are in Oz. Anyone who touches the desert would just be turned into living sand. The group traveled on while Dorothy and the Scarecrow told of all their adventures. Finally, Everell called out, "I can see something moving in the distance." They all looked and saw very far away what seemed to be people moving. As they moved closer, they saw a town completely made of sand, with sandmen going in and out of small sandcastles. They approached one sandman who was sitting at the outskirts of town looking very depressed. "Hello, what town is this?" asked Polychrome. "This is Sandy Hook," he sighed. "This is the town where everyone who turns into sand from the desert comes to live. The whole town is made up of people who have fallen into the deadly desert." "And who are you?" Polly asked. "Oh, you can just call me Sandy," said the Sandman. Looking at them more closely, he asked, "Why haven't you turned to sand like the rest of us?" They explained about the magic carpet and how they were looking for an immortal who had walked willingly into the desert that day. "I guess that would mean me," said Sandy. "I walked into the deadly desert today, but I can't remember why. As soon as anyone is turned into sand, they lose their memory. No one in all of Sandy Hook can remember who they were before they came here." "Then our whole trip was for nothing," said Nicholas. "We'd better go and try and find Polly's cousin." "Could I come with you?" asked Sandy, perking up. "I don't think I can stand to be in this town where no one knows who they are any longer." "Sure, come with us," said Dorothy. "Maybe you can help us find the northeast wind." "Perhaps Ventilation fell into the deadly desert and he's in Sandy Hook now," said Nick. "But there's no way of finding out for sure." "Well, if he's in Oz at all, we'd better find him soon," the Scarecrow said. "The sun is beginning to go down." "Oh no," said Polychrome. "Now we'll never find him." "There's only one chance," said Nicholas. "Everell, I wish that everyone here would be transported to the land at the side of the desert, and anyone who has been transformed in any way would turn back into what they were before, and their memory would be completely restored." Suddenly, a bright light flashed in the town. When they recovered from the bright flash, they found themselves on the grass at the side of the sand. Everyone from Sandy Hook was standing off in the distance, trying to figure out what had happened. Nicholas turned around and noticed someone running away from them. "Who's that running away?" called Nicholas. "That must be Sandy," said Dorothy. "It's the King of Ev!" exclaimed the Scarecrow. Nicholas cried, "I'll catch him," as he ran after Evoldo. Suddenly, a rope shot out from his pocket and caught up with the running king and bound him up within its coils. Dorothy and the Scarecrow ran over to them. "How did you capture him, Nick?" asked the Scarecrow. "I used my living rope from the gump. I just hold it to capture him," said Nicholas. They all came over to Evoldo and demanded to know why he had walked into the deadly desert. Evoldo reluctantly began to tell them his story. "I'm sure you know about my jumping into the non-nestic ocean," he said. "Well, of course, I never really drowned, as no immortals can. I just lived on the bottom of the ocean. Then one day, I became frustrated with myself for giving up my kingdom for the ocean floor, so I decided to climb out and regain control of my kingdom. I crawled out of the ocean and found myself in Mo, and I couldn't remember how to get back to Ev. I started to walk north, and when I got to the deadly desert, I remembered what I had heard about a pair of silver slippers that were lost in the desert that would be able to get me home again. I knew that I would turn into sand, but I would have to live with that until I could find someone to disenchant me. However, as soon as I turned into sand, I didn't remember anything until now. I suppose I would still be sad now if it hadn't been for you, so I will do whatever you say as punishment for my evil ways." "I think we ought to let Everell decide his punishment, since he's the one who turned her into porcelain," reasoned Dorothy. "Where is Everell?" "I don't see Polly either," said Nick. "There she is," said the Scarecrow, pointing toward the crowd of transformed sand people. Soon Polychrome came dancing over to them, pulling along someone behind her. "I've found him! This is my cousin," she called. "This is Ventilation." "Oh, it's you again," Evoldo grumbled. "I thought I had gotten rid of you with that fairy potion." Dorothy gasped. "You mean that Ventilation was—" "Yes, I was Everell," interrupted Ventilation. "My brother Typhonic bargained with Evoldo to get rid of me for the next year so that he would become the Northeast Wind. Evoldo's sorcerer turned me into a fairy, but seeing that I could still get away and might break the spell somehow, he put another spell on me, which turned me to porcelain. By this time, the first spell had confused my sense of time passage and had totally erased my memory. I presumed that I had always been a fairy, and that the only spell that had been put on me was the second one, which I had heard the sorcerer say was only temporary. So I thought that I was free from all enchantment when Dorothy freed me from the porcelain spell." "I thank you very much for freeing me," added Ventilation, "but I must go to my coronation now. I'm sure that Uncle Roy will be sending down a rainbow for us any time now." "Uncle Roy?" questioned Dorothy. "Yes, that's my father, the Rainbow," said Polychrome. "His name is Roy G. Biv." With that, a rainbow fell from above, just as the sun finished lowering itself out of the sky. Polychrome and Ventilation ran up to it, calling goodbye to everyone in Ev. "Now what shall we do with Evoldo?" asked Dorothy after a moment. "Let's send him home and have the Queen of Ev decide what to do with him," suggested the Scarecrow. So they sent him towards Ev on the magic carpet and then started back for the Emerald City. "It's just too bad that you never got to use the wish you needed for yourself," Dorothy said to Nicholas when they were speeding along in the red wagon. "But I did," he said. "I got a wonderful adventure and a trip to Oz without having to use a wish. And I got to help people. I couldn't ask for anything better, even if I still had my wish." "I guess you're right," said Dorothy, knowing that he was. The end.